Welcome to Karen's Conversations number 11. We're in double figures, which is pretty awesome. I'm privileged to be joined on this conversation with Mark Smalley, and we're going to talk about the Business Information Systems Library and what that's about and where it came from.
Services Library, my dear. Services Library.
Oh, Services Library. Sorry, it's the end of the day in Australia. My apologies. So before we do that and kick into the topic, I'm going to get Mark, you to introduce yourself, because I can't even pronounce the paradigmologist word. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
You did that very well. Yeah. I call myself the IT paradigmologist because it's what I like doing. I like studying IT paradigms, sort of how people have differing and changing perspectives on this wonderful world that we call IT. So that's the IT paradigmologist bit. I invented that about I think probably about 3, 4, 5 years ago, just to attract a bit of attention. But I'm a self-employed consultant. Used to work for Capgemini for quite a while, and have been affiliated with not-for-profit ASL BiSL Foundation. And BiSL is the abbreviation of the Business Information Services Library. Been affiliated with them for more or less, I think since their inception about 12 years ago. So it's spent part of my time as their ambassador, spreading the word about the best practices that we've gathered and put into. Give you an idea. Let's see. There's. Just to give you an idea, a couple of the books. This is how we capture the stuff.
I can do Snap.
Oh, no, that's very good of you. Gosh, you've done your homework.
I have done my homework. At least I look like I've done my homework.
Yeah.
So, Mark, tell us, what is Bizzle? What's it all about?
Yeah, well, I think probably most of your audience will be familiar with the ITIL framework, coming from the IT services management industry. And you could say what ITIL is for ITSM, Bizzle is for the business. So it's the other side of the coin, where ITIL focuses on supply of IT services. Just think about the people who need the services. Somebody's got to formulate, what do we actually want? And when they get the services and the systems back, they've got to ensure that the users actually use the systems well and get value out of them. So these are really two complementary and interlocking bodies of knowledge. So that's sort of positioning. I often call it, just a shorthand, the business's guide to IT.
Okay.
So from their perspective.
So what sort of drove its creation in terms of the business needing to understand and drive IT?
Well, I just referred to ITIL. This is, you recall, in the 90s, mid-90s, ITIL started emerging. And there were a couple of people at the Dutch National Computer Center. I live in the Netherlands now, lived there for 40 years, born in London. In the Dutch National Computer Center, people caught on to ITIL, said, yeah, that's a good idea. It was at the time very much focused on infrastructure. And these people were more affiliated, more associated with applications. And they said, gosh, wouldn't it be good if we had an ITIL for the application world? Which is when the ASL framework emerged, the Application Services Library. So you had infrastructure and applications together, and two frameworks for that. And then the same people realized, yeah, that's the IT provider bit. What about the poor people on the other side of the fence? What are their responsibilities? Because you've got to be equal dancing partners to get value out of IT. So the business also has its roles and responsibilities, and that's how it emerged. I think towards the end of the 20th century, and then it was put into the public domain in a foundation, not-for-profit foundation. I think 2002 was the foundation of the foundation.
Okay. So can you, in a nutshell, tell us what, if someone's to pick up this, the sort of components and the contents that they're going to find inside the publication?
Yeah, it's very much process-based. So it talks about activities in terms of what are the goals of, it's 26 processes with, for each process, goals, activities, results, that kind of stuff. So what goes in, what comes out, what do you actually do? And it covers the areas of from operational stuff to strategic thinking about IT. If you think about operational stuff, supporting the users in their daily use of information systems, you probably, as a user, you've often come across the situation where you're using a system, you know technically how to use it, but you don't know what's applicable in a certain business context. You can call the IT department, but they'll just explain how the buttons work. I want to know which button to use in this business context. So I look at a colleague, to ask a colleague, how do we do this in our department? And that super user function is something that we've formalized and enhanced a little bit in the support activities in BiSL. So one of the things is about supporting the users in their daily work. The other thing on the operational side is when things need changing, when users, business people want different kind of functionality, somebody's got to come up with, what kind of the requirements for the change. So who formulates the change, who discusses it with the IT department, who participates in things like preparing the department for the deployment, making sure that everybody's informed, doing acceptance testing. So that whole change process from the perspective of business responsibilities, that's a part of the framework on the operation. That's more or less operational stuff. And I'm sort of mentally referring to the model in which we have operational stuff down the bottom and more strategic stuff up top. On the top of the model, we have the information strategy. So long term, as a company, now take the example of social media, which emerged 5-10 years ago. As a company, what's our policy? What do we want to do with social media? Is it a competitive instrument for us? That kind of long-term thinking, what, as an enterprise, how do we want to invest our money? And how much money do we want to invest in this strange resource called IT? Along with strategy, we have governance, thinking in terms of roles and responsibilities, accountabilities. And finally, because we've had support and change, strategy and governance. Finally, we've got the management activities. For instance, I think in IT service management, we're all familiar with service management and service level agreements. Mm-hmm. Who on the other side of the fence, who in the business deals with the contract, deals with the service level agreement, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So that's a very brief overview. And I'll give you some links to include to share with the audience.
Yeah, I'll definitely include them when we post the video.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Yeah. So you already mentioned some of the. Sorry, I'll go back. Why do you think it's sort of growing in importance? There's more and more interest in it. I'm hearing more about Bizzle as go through conferences and seminars and social media. So what do you think is driving its importance?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been around for a while now, and although it's reached, I think it's probably reached maturity in the Netherlands, where the home market. And just to give you an idea, if you compare the number of certificates that people have got in BiSL compared to the number of certificates in ITIL in the Netherlands, BiSL has about 20% of the volume of ITIL. So if there are 100,000 people certified in ITIL, then there'd be 20,000 certified in BiSL. So I think that's probably what you'd reach in a mature market. Outside the Netherlands, it's been very limited. Somehow or other, it's probably my fault for not doing my ambassadorial work well enough. Somehow or other, it's only recently started to gather more interest. I think it's partially to do with the change in how businesses use IT. One of the buzzwords now, apart from DevOps, which everybody's talking about, which is great, one of the buzzwords seems to be digital transformation and the digital enterprise. Lots of people seem to be talking about that. It's often poorly defined. What do people actually mean by a digital enterprise? But I like to define it as an enterprise where IT is used as a strategic instrument, strategic asset or resource, so something that you can use to make more money instead of just to keep the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when IT in the eyes of business people is elevated to that level of, oh, this is important, then IT suddenly becomes something that they have to worry about. Now, they can't blame the IT department when things go wrong. They realize it's our responsibility. This is a significant asset. We better get our act together. So I have an idea that the emergence of more enterprises that use IT as a really important asset, that's encouraging them to think about, oh, what are our responsibilities? Which roles should we have? So I think that's something that's driving it at the moment. In fact,
Yeah.
I've been asked. I spent quite a lot of my time talking at conferences, and only recently I've been asked at 3 conferences to talk about the relationship between the digital enterprise and the changing role of IT in enterprises. So I think there's something in the air.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I spoke to Matt Hooper recently on another conversation talking about digital transformation. And I think, and people are talking about it in the age of disruption, and I think it absolutely is. And I think it's really exciting for IT. I think there's major changes afoot, and I think the business and IT have got to take a hard look of where they are currently today and how they operate and how they interface and how they utilize each other, come up with better ways of working.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting topic which I've been thinking about for a while now, and this is work in progress, but it's such a fascinating topic. If you think about how we've organized IT departments, or organized the IT function, traditionally it's been a centralized IT function, mostly. And it got me thinking about, why do we actually centralize things? And did a bit of research on that. McKinsey, fairly reliable source for this kind of guidance, says you should only centralize when either it's mandated, external stakeholders determine you have to centralize certain activities, or when it gives you significant benefits to your bottom line, market capitalization or profit, 10% or more, and under the condition that you're not running too high risks with respect to stuff like bureaucracy and distraction from your core business. So really, they say a decentralized state is the natural way to do things, and you should only centralize when you've got a good reason to centralize. Now, I think previously, we centralized IT because we could get cost savings, get efficiencies. But when the name of the game shifts from efficiency to effectiveness, In other words, when I can make more money from a resource like IT, I don't care that much anymore about efficiency. I'm prepared to pay a little bit more for what I spend on IT because it's given me such bigger benefits in the business itself. Just think about what people spend on IT. Of course, it varies from industry to industry, but if you take the percentage of total costs spent on IT as opposed to on other things, generally varies between a couple of percent to about 30. And on average, I asked a professor in economics, he said, probably about 12% on average companies spend on IT. So that is, although of course, if you can save on anything, you should do it. But if you could spend, say you spent 10% on IT, and with 1% extra spending, you could generate much more business, then you'd be foolish to cut your IT costs. You should be spending more on IT because it generates more volume. But that's only if you're using IT as a strategic asset.
Absolutely.
So that centralization, decentralization issue, very interesting to think about. Should we be thinking about decentralizing the IT function into the various lines of business so that they can act more effectively with each other? And last point, should we still be talking about a demand-supply relationship between IT and the lines of business, or are they merging together? And instead of two people opposite each other, demand and supply, should they be next to each other, working towards the same goal?
Yeah, and that's very interesting because there's an organisation in Australia, Real Estate Australia, REA Group, and they'd actually do tours. The CIO there, who doesn't use the title CIO, but he will do tours, and they're very DevOps, agile, startup type. But they actually organise themselves in lines of business. So a line of business could be residential real estate, then they'll have marketing, legal, IT, sales, HR, you name it, and they're all sitting together at one long table working on that product or that service. And it's quite mind-blowing when you see it. And it makes common sense, but when you see it for the first time, you're thinking, wow, this is, a big change in approach, but it works really well for them. They're a showcase organization because of the way they've done things.
Yeah, and yes, they have inefficiencies. If you look at the various business lines next to each other, yes, they all have legal people in them. Yes, they all have IT people. Yeah, but they're more successful because they've organized it this way. So I think there's a legitimate case for decentralization. Yeah, watch this space. I think that's one of the disruptive elements for traditional centralized IT departments.
Yeah, I agree. Now, one of the things that you say in the framework is that the business, in my reading, the business needs to be in charge. IT is an asset, and they need to be able to manage that asset as they would any other assets in the organisation. But if the business or the internal customer is saying, well, okay, these are the suppliers I want to select my suppliers, whether that be an internal or an external provider. How does that fit in? One of the new things we're also hearing about these days is SIAM, where IT is setting up the SIAM structure and to manage the various suppliers that they are then providing to the business. So how does that sort of fit?
Yeah, to a degree they merge, but if just for the sake of argument and for the sake of a simple explanation, if we still talk about IT and business as two divided areas, two separate domains, even if they merge, we can still distinguish between the two. Then you could say that the great stuff in SIAM, if you look at SIAM, it's guidance for the IT function, how to integrate multiple vendors' activities. I think the big question with SIAM, at least the big question with not with the framework, but how you deal with it with that topic is who is responsible for actually integrating the various vendors? Is that something you want to do yourself as an enterprise, or are you prepared to give that to somebody in the marketplace, an external service provider? Or are you taking high risks. I think the overarching question is who's best positioned to fulfill the integration role, and I think it'll vary from company to company. But back to the question, BiSL and SIAM. If SIAM's guidance for the integration of multiple service providers, BiSL is more thinking about what do we need done, and whether it's done by one or many. I think there's overlap between BiSL and SIAM on that topic. So to a degree, there's a little bit of overlap, but the primary difference is BiSL is for business people, SIAM is for IT people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a little bit of writing on that, and I'll give you the link to that as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll add that to the ones you've already sent me, which is awesome. So people, the organisations, as you say, particularly in the Netherlands, but it's started to get interest elsewhere. What are some of the benefits that the organisations that have actually picked up this framework and run with it? What sort of benefits have they seen?
Yeah, it varies. In fact, one of the publications I just picked up so I can show you is each year, it's called Case Studies. Each year we have our big conference in the Netherlands, and we've got into the habit of awarding companies a prize for how they've used the best practices that we've gathered. And for the past 10 years, we've collected the best practices, and I've analysed what they've said about what value they've got out of their investments in the framework. You could split it up into three categories: pure business, the business's use of IT, and IT stuff. And just to give you an example, if you look at the first category, business benefits, the Dutch police force reported that they could catch more persistent criminals. And this is nothing about IT. They could catch more persistent criminals because they'd organized their information a lot better by applying the guidance in the framework. So that's real societal benefit. Catch more criminals, and the thing was, criminals went from state to state in the Netherlands, and how one state organised its IT, its information provisioning, differed from the other. So there wasn't much information exchange. So a criminal who committed a crime in one state could do the same thing in another state without that info. So that's one example. Related to IT, business say we can. And this is important if you're in a highly regulated enterprise. If as a business person you're tasked with managing your stuff well, governance. If you ask an executive how important is IT for running your business, you'll probably say it's very important. Now, if I now ask you the next question, now how can you demonstrate that you're managing IT as an important business asset? They can't. So there's a need to formalize things and say, this is what we do. So that's an example of how business people have used BiSL to structure their activities and demonstrate that they've got things under control. The final category was more for the IT department, because although BiSL is aimed at business people, IT people say it's easier to deal with the business because if you think in terms of dancing partners, if both are for equal competence, it makes life much more easy. What we've seen in the past, I think, is that IT has spent a lot of effort on improving the maturity of their activities, whereas the business has possibly lagged behind. And businesses who've improved their maturity, they're easier to deal with. So there are three examples of benefits.
Mm. So who would you say, if you know, we're talking about this publication and some of the others that we've referenced this conversation, who are the sort of people in the business and the sort of people in IT that, we could say everybody, but the key people that would get benefit from picking that up?
Yeah, if you start at the IT department, it's generally the forward-facing, the sort of business-facing people in IT. So you could think in terms of service managers, service level managers, business relationship managers. Fascinating topic. Recall we were both at the BRM Connect event in Sydney, and last week there was a repeat of the event in Amsterdam. So I was with some of the same people last week, talking about the role of business relationship managers in building relationships with their business partners. Now you can well imagine, if you're the business and I'm the IT business relationship manager, I'm building a relationship with you using the BRM guidance. Now you're building a relationship with me. What guidance are you using? That's if we talk about the business relationship manager in the IT department, possibly we should be talking about the IT relationship manager in the business. So it would be really, it's people on the business side who deal with IT, people on the IT side who deal with the business. I think they both benefit from taking a look at the book and using it. I think in the first instance, just as a checklist. They're probably doing lots of this stuff already, but are they? Is it formalized to a degree which is suitable for that organization? Are they doing the stuff? So just as a checklist, that's the first step, I think.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Look, that's been a great conversation, and I will send all those links and any others that you have for me. I will put that when we post the video on the website. It's great to hear that it's getting more conversation. It has been very Netherlands focused, but it's now nice to hear people talking about it and picking up and in showing interest, even just asking the question, what's it about? So I'll post all those links so people can get lots more information if they need it.
Yeah, smashing. Thank you for showing interest.
Not at all. I thank you very much for your time. So Karen's Conversations number 12 will be coming your way very soon.
Bye now.
Bye.